I can't put too much time and energy into investing into my online store and a shipping D2C business because I don't know if that bill is going to go away. I would hate to put in all that time and investment to have that bill just go poof at the end of the year, which it very well could.
Good morning, everyone, and also a very happy new year from my side, and especially to all the attendees because this is our first webinar of 2024. So I'm so glad that all our speakers and all our attendees are here. Just to give a brief to what the session is. So this is a pre-extended version of IBWSS conference, which is originally going to take place in the month of July on 23rd and 24th in San Francisco. We would be touching base on a couple of topics that Sid, who is going to moderate this State Distillers Association panel, he'll give a brief about what exactly we will be discussing, but the same panel guys is going to be there in the IBWSS event as well. We would be mainly focusing on how these associations can help spirit producers. I think that's it. So over to you, Sid.
Great. So let's get started, guys. Why don't we start with introductions? Teresa, could you just walk over your journey and then, what is the mission of the association? And I guess the same question goes to everyone. So we'll just start.
Great. My name is Teresa Casey. I'm executive director of the New York State Distillers Guild, and I come not from the distilling world, but from the association world. I have a small association management company, so I'm like an executive director for hire. My specialty is working with organizations that are not big enough to have their own full-time staff. So I've been working with the Distillers Guild since 2019. So I barely got my feet wet before we got into the pandemic and everything that involved for our industry. So we're really looking forward to a big year in 2024 and look forward to talking a little bit about what we're doing for our members.
Great. And what is that one mission or, one goal that your association has?
Our mission, our organization has been largely focused on the public policy needs of distillers, which are pretty significant, so legislative and regulatory representation. But in 2024, we've gotten some good state support from our government, which will help us really expand our support of our members' marketing and the building of NY Distilled as a premier brand for spirits.
John, over to you.
I'm a distiller who started in 2015. We were the 7th license issued in Jersey and the 4th to open. We're small numbers in Jersey. We're only around 30 distilleries actually active and open. Our main goal as a distilling guild is to bring everybody together, get one voice. And we got that done around 2017, 2018. We brought on a lobbyist in 2022 and has remained with us. I don't know if everybody knows about New Jersey. We probably have some of the most difficult laws. Our big focus, though, is to get parity with the other craft alcohol manufacturers because we are very low on the list. Even though we're not the smallest numbers, I think meaderies and cideries are smaller than us, and wine's just a little bit above us. The brewers get a lot of different things, so do the wineries, and we're just looking for parity. We of course have a lot of challenges in our state, and there's a lot of mayhem here. So that's what we're working to navigate through.
I live in New Jersey, so thanks. I appreciate it. Aaron, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Bergh. I own a distillery called Calwife Spirits Company located in Paso, Robles, California. I also serve as the president of the Paso Robles Distillery Trail, which is a little regional organization within California. And our main goal is to attract more distilling and spirits tourism in the Paso Robles region and really grow our region up as an epicenter for distilling, because a lot of people already know Paso Robles for wine, but they don't realize that we have 13 distilleries just in Paso Robles alone, and that number is growing. So we're really working as a marketing and tourism outreach organization, but we also do some policy advocacy as well.
Great. Nice to know. David?
Yeah, thanks for having me. David Cohen here. I'm the owner operator of Manifest Distilling, which is based in Jacksonville, Florida. But then I'm also the president of the Florida Craft Spirits Association, which is our trade advocacy group. We're going on our 4th year of membership, coming into our 4th season of membership. We've got just shy of 50 members, and there's probably twice that many licenses in the state of Florida, kind of ranging from small, 1 and 2 man mom and pop shops up to some larger regional players. Sounds like ours is probably very similar to Aaron in terms of what we focus on. Our 3-pronged approach is education, marketing, and then regulatory influence. A little over 3 years ago, we had a pretty massive bill that passed at the state level that opened up a lot of allowances for craft distilleries. And I think the past couple of years has been everybody settling into that and enjoying kind of the fruits of that hard work. So we've been quiet on that front. And more of it now is marketing and education. We just launched our Florida Craft Spirits Trail. We launched an app, a digital app experience to go along with that. So that's been our biggest focus.
Great. And I think one of the great common thing here is on purpose. I mean, we wanted little, smaller regions or states, obviously not Tennessee or Kentucky, so I'm sure everyone can relate. There will be a common sort of, you'll have to market the region. You have to sort of start creating a brand that a whiskey from New Jersey, is at par or internationally can be recognized as well, right? So let me lead into the first question, which is on spirits trends that you guys see in 2024. And to make it a little deeper and fun, I don't want, the typical agave, mezcal, RTD, or no alcohol or low alcohol 4 things in it. So apart from those 4, what other categories or opportunities that you see the consumers are trading in, which distillers can sort of, look into or make new products or start offering that flavor profiles? Like what are you seeing? It can be state specific as well.
You took agave out of there, but we're actually seeing a lot of people asking for straight up tequila, but there's the quandary there of obviously not being locally made. But some of the other things I've been seeing, at least in the past 6 months, is people inquiring about peated bourbons and other smoked whiskeys, not necessarily in the form of single malts or scotch. So that's something that we've seen a lot of discussion about.
And what are you seeing, Aaron, in terms of like consumer interest or inquiries, to your group?
Yeah, we're having a lot of people asking for tequila and agave spirits, of course. And I know in California, there's an effort to actually start growing agave here, to lean in more into agave spirits. So that's obviously a trend. I mean, you said you don't want me to talk about, seltzers and RTDs. I actually think that those are actually going to be out of style in the next year or 2. I'm super bearish on RTDs. I think people are going to realize in the next year or 2 that they don't really have any soul, to put it in one way. So I think those are going to go down. I'm seeing a lot of people want American single malt, to kind of echo what John has said. I think people are starting to realize that single malt isn't just Scotch, that there's some pretty cool American styles coming out. And surprisingly, it seems like liqueurs are starting to trend, not just Amaros, but like sweet liqueurs, like, orange liqueurs and coffee liqueurs and things like that.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, so like all of you have addressed, and Sid, you took the big players off the table. So I'll echo everybody else's comments about RTDs and tequilas. But moving past those items, we're in Florida, and despite what everybody thinks about, vodka being still the number 1 sold and consumed spirit in the United States, and tequila's on the rise, whiskey is our biggest ask. I mean, people come in here, we make vodkas, whiskeys, gins, liqueurs, everything, but whiskey is still the one thing that I think if people, especially from a tourism standpoint, if people are going to visit a distillery, that's the thing that they're kind of most curious about, right? It's still the sexy item. It has, comes out of barrels, and it's what people associate with American spirit. So really, more than anything, from a consumer and tourism standpoint, we see whiskeys. Obviously, bourbon is the top of that list because it's the most well known. And surprisingly, we don't. I mean, there are the narrow channels of quote unquote whiskey nerds, and I say that with affection. We don't get a lot of that specific channel, right? It's more of the gross popularity of just, brown water, so to speak, in general. And then a very close second to that would be rums. And again, I think these are very, very geographical items. I mean, you being in Florida in the South, and you play up on those ideals.
Nice. I think we're also hearing a lot on sustainability, right? Like, especially, I mean, one simple way someone explained me, is the closer the bottle source and the lighter the bottle, it's more sustainable. So that makes me think that are we thinking we are going to go more local, like meaning New Jersey is going to focus more on New Jersey passing the laws to make it more sustainable, and people are going to buy and sell more state-wise because the closer the source, the sustainable it is, right? So what's your take on that one? And as far as marketing goes, what are some good techniques or tips you have in storytelling that sort of regional area? Like, hey, my distillery is from Paso Robles, let's say, or from this county of New Jersey. What have you seen some successful marketers doing? So you can answer both questions. Whoever can go first.
I'm happy to speak for a few minutes on sustainability. At the New York Guild, I've observed conversations kind of in two areas when it comes to sustainability. One is, our own member-driven work in terms of managing water waste, managing stillage waste. And I've been kind of surprised that to the degree to which you sort of I think the consumers generally think about that kind of thing naturally in rural communities. People think about partnerships with farmers, partnerships with grain processors, partnerships with bakers and stuff like that. But there's actually a very intense concentration of those types of services in New York City, where we have pretty intensive regulations on water runoff and things like that. So it's interesting, there's kind of a regulatory interplay there, but it plays out differently in different parts of the state. And the other piece, as you mentioned, is packaging. And here in New York, there's a significant, and I know there have been efforts in other states. There's a significant legislative push for regulation on packaging, and there are very, very major players in that dialogue. So we're just sort of working to to monitor, see what would be the best way for us to participate. We might end up being part of the deposit bottle law, which has been law of the land in New York since I was a little kid. And we're very fortunate. We have on our board member a distiller from out in our beautiful Finger Lakes region, who in her pre-distilling career was both a lawyer and a glass engineer. So she positions us very well to be able to understand the science and the infrastructure that will be required. I think often in public policy, legislators get very aggressive ideas, and they can sometimes put things into law when really the physical infrastructure doesn't exist yet and might be impossible to build. But certainly these stories about collaborations with farmers are important to the way a lot of our members talk about how they operate.
So just for everyone, let's say we already know what we know, right? So what the states are doing or what's happening. If you were a distiller, which many of you are, what would you do in terms of coming out with a new package? If you were to design a new package, what would that look like? Because you already know what direction we are going in, right? So just add that as well, if you may.
So I'm Geoff Longenecker, Seven Cave Spirits here in San Diego. I'm president of the San Diego Distillers Guild. So thank you for having me so much, guys. I wanted to touch base on one thing that was talked earlier, and I think it's a very important thing that we haven't really mentioned. We're talking about coming trends and that kind of thing. I really think the word that I think most consumers are reacting to mostly is authenticity.
And it's one that when we talk about RTDs, RTDs are dominated really by one or two players on the market. But really, I think RTDs they're very interesting. I'm in the RTD category. My partners are as well. But what's fascinating to me is how they've changed. It's no longer just rum and Coke or, one of our member groups is the largest RTD maker on the planet. Anheuser-Busch owned Cutwater. But what you're starting to see, at least in that market, is a shift towards more natural ingredients, not manufactured ingredients. I'm talking about actual juices. And I think that's a really interesting thing to point out. We, drawing the broad brush over the RTD market. Also to that point, I wanted to point this out for sustainability purposes. A big change that's really happened in the last, we'll call it year, is the advent of printed cans. While that doesn't seem like a big deal, it is, because the overwrapped cans aren't as recyclable as printed cans are, the ones you get directly from the manufacturers. So seeing that on a craft level, I think, is very important to that market, because the cans become imminently more recyclable. They're more regionally located. There are players that are in that direct can printing market now. And I think from a sustainability standpoint, that's really nice to see. We're also, of course, being led by the beer guys. We're seeing way fewer pack techs. We're seeing way fewer, no more rings, thankfully. So that's all.
Let's say if you're pitching to a big chain like Target, or someone's really, putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to sustainability, what kind of conversations are happening in packaging, or so they're pushing you back to come up with an actual sustainable sort of business plan?
So yeah, New Jersey in the 2021 session at the very end passed a recycling content law, and it mandates that all manufacturers have to at least have 35% recycled materials in any of their packaging, and they have to register, and they have to somehow take on the proof or the burden of this recycle mandate. And of course, that's going to affect more of the plastic if we choose to use it, or the cans if we're doing RTDs and stuff. The DEP did come in and give a non-beverage kind of category for both spirits and wine. So they really don't have to follow and register for the glass. But of course, glass is eminently recyclable. But they are probably the most advanced recycling laws in the country. I mean, we can't even go to the supermarket and get plastic bags. You have to bring your own bags, or buy these, what I think are worse for the environment, bags. But we actually are pretty progressive with it. And even some distilleries, including ours, our landlord is experimenting putting solar panels on our roofs. And there's a couple of other distilleries that are contemplating this as well. So in addition to the normal stuff that we do, I think there are a lot of people in New Jersey, because of the cost of things and of course the progression of our recycling, that we're really focused on being as much of a sustainable industry as possible. And like Geoff said, we're going to be much better than the brewers, because there is a ton of waste. I mean, I have a brewer right next door, and it's just a ton more waste than we can ever create. We've also had some of our distilleries take some of the products, like the heads and the stuff that's going to get thrown out or destroyed, and they're making different things out of them. Like, I don't want to say candles, because they're more like bug repellent things. They're adding things to it, and then they're selling those out in their packaging that they're getting back from customers, that they'll take in. I've heard of other places taking in bottles so they could properly recycle them, and we've done this too, and giving a credit, like a 5% or 10% discount card to that customer who brought that stuff in.
That's
so and I have customers who just bring in crates of our stuff all the time, because they go, I don't want to throw the bottles out, they're too nice. And I'm like, great, I'm going to be recycling them, but okay, at least they're going somewhere.
Yeah, those are nice initiatives. Yes, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here. As I see a question came in asking, do we do any collabs with wineries for making brandy? And that's one thing that we do a lot of up here in Paso Robles, actually. And in the winemaking process, there's a process called saignée, which a lot of you may be familiar with, where to get a higher skin to juice ratio in the red winemaking process, you end up bleeding off some of the juice. And what most of the wineries did around here before the distilling industry came along is they would just dump thousands of gallons of juice on the ground, which is not great for the environment. And frankly, it's a waste because you're putting all these inputs into grapes, fertilizer, time, energy, irrigation, and then you're just dumping juice on the ground. So what myself and a lot of other distillers have done up here is we've gone to these wineries and we've managed to take this saignée, which is still excellent quality juice with high sugar content that can be fermented, and we're distilling it into really high quality spirits.
Yeah, I think of all the states represented on today's panel, I think Florida comes in dead last in terms of sustainability and recycling measures, in terms of anything that's state mandated. The programs just, we don't do any kind of like bottle recycling, and I don't think that there's been a tremendous amount of focus on it from a statewide standpoint. From an industry trend standpoint, a lot of the sustainability conversations that I've been a part of or I've seen coming are really surrounding packaging. And the reason why, and John kind of touched on this, is as craft distillers, we don't generate, percentage-wise, we don't generate that much waste comparatively to breweries or some of the much larger, kind of more industrial distilleries, which we do have a few of those here making, GNS and stuff in the state. But a lot of these craft guys, we don't generate a tremendous amount of output. So any focus that I've seen has been on things that distilleries can do, like recycling their own glass, for example, everything that comes out of the tasting room, which is very much responsible of the actual, we don't have any kind of public recycling program for businesses. We have to pay for that out of pocket. And then same thing with the packaging. We're seeing a lot of innovations in fully recyclable packaging, like cardboard outers with these bag inserts that you can break down and fully. And we're seeing more of that coming online, and more bottling plants being able to accept and use that kind of packaging. I'd say that's primarily where we've seen any kind of conversations around sustainability happening.
I was just going to say one big change that we had from a sustainability standpoint as well is California just passed for both wine and spirit for the first time since I've been in the business. The ability to return bottles for both wine and California. So the CRV is now part of our world, which is an interesting process. It's definitely going to help with glass recycling for sure. That's one of the biggest surprises that I have found since I've been in the industry, is that wine bottles weren't recyclable. So it's you could recycle them, but you couldn't return them. So the fact that we now have returnable bottles in the spirit world, they're giving us a year to implement it. So that's good, because it's going to take relabeling and all that stuff. But that's a big new initiative California just passed January 1.
So just leveraging off of what Aaron was speaking about, we not only take wine in to make a brandy, we from the town winemakers, we're in a very Italian American community. We take in their grape scraps and make grappa out of it every year. So we clean up about 5 different families of winemaking and do take their grape scraps instead of it ending up in a landfill. And then after we're done with them, we give them to a farmer to give to pigs and goats. Yeah, but we also do anytime we have a brewer in the state who has a bad batch of beer, it happens. They confidentially contact us, and we direct them to a distillery that'll take it in and distill it into a product. Because even bad beer or bad wine can make some really fantastic spirits. They're generally one-off projects, but we've done that. And I've even done it with a meadery that had something go awry with an apple pie mead, and we made a great product out of it that sold out in like a month and a half.
One question is for the members, for the distillers, right? And apart from just generally, not just your own members, how can you best take advantage of state associations, when it comes to grants or understanding, compliance, import, export, sales, what are the ideal or good ways that distiller can sort of work with association, and why should they work? And talk me some business benefits so that it makes sense for someone to spend time and make a relationship with you guys?
As I mentioned, the New York Guild has been largely focused on public policy. So this is really where we can help our members. For New York we have almost 100 members in our guild, and we figure that's about 2/3 of the actual licenses. It's always a trick to how many, the number of licenses vastly exceeds the number of actual distilleries. So it's hard to really figure out that number. But our members are incredibly diverse in terms of where they are in the state, in terms of, are they in cities, are they in towns? A few of them are owned by larger corporations at this point. So there's an incredible diversity of needs. So, the guild has, one thing that I love about our guild is that people have realized that it's much better to speak with one voice, even if everybody doesn't agree on every single policy issue. And our guild has been quite effective at that. And we actually had a significant legislative win last year on a sort of a wonky tax policy issue, but it was major in that it gave us parity with brewers. Parity is also always our theme. And there are just things that are easier to do with a single voice. So, and actually when it comes to compliance, we're the tax and finance regulators who are implementing that new rule will be speaking to us at our annual meeting this year in terms of giving people concrete information about, how to really fill out the forms. And that's a real benefit that we provide to our members. We have our annual meeting in the capital city. Our liquor authority, the chair of our liquor authority will be there. Our agriculture and markets people will be there talking about lots of support that's available to them. We'll have very high ranking people who work directly for the governor. And so for us, access to state officials is incredibly important because, distillers, our vast majority of our members are very small and they don't have, unlike an insurance company or other kinds of businesses, which have vast internal resources as far as regulatory councils and compliance and stuff like that. It's much more direct with our guys. And that is that's a major connection point that we're able to provide to our members.
So our guild is really D2C focused, and our goal really is to generate more D2C business for our member distilleries. And what we do is, we print out maps of our entire trail. So we advertise, hey, come to Paso Robles. You can do wine tasting. There's also an entire distillery trail. We're going to map it all out for you. We're going to list your distillery on this map, and we're going to distribute these maps to every single member distillery, all the hotels, the Chamber of Commerce, the visitor centers, everywhere in the area where tourists are going looking for things to do. And we're seeing a lot of people pick up these maps and go to our member distilleries because because there's a Paso Robles distillery trail that's being marketed. We do an annual event every year too, where we call it Paso Robles Distillery Trail Weekend, and we all kind of do like a open house at our distilleries and make it into a big weekend-long event that brings a lot of people out. And we've been doing that for a few years now and seeing that consistently grow. So we're really focused on direct consumer sales increase.
I think for New Jersey, the biggest benefit, like Teresa, is that connection to policymaking. Like I said earlier, we're at the bottom of the hill. Everybody else has so much more capabilities than we do. It's always looked at as, oh, that's hard liquor. That's not like the soft alcohol that everything else is. And that's a big challenge for us. And because we have small numbers, it's very difficult to get that voice in there. But, during COVID, we had a lot of losses on what we couldn't do. But other alcohol manufacturers could do. But one of the biggest things that we pulled out of it was the ability to do farmers markets, which literally saved some of the distilleries in the state from going out of business. And, it's that type of thing. But because we're such a small number, what people don't realize is those who aren't with the guild and supporting the guild and being a part of that voice, they're actually losing it for everybody, because we're not going to have those wins unless everybody's banded together, and we do have that one voice and going after them. Even the current, I don't know what everybody knows about New Jersey, but the brewers in New Jersey weren't allowed to, they were restricted on events. They had to do certain things that really jeopardized the ability to operate as usual. And that same thing has been, we've been holding off since 2019. The brewers weren't able to hold it off, but that just got, or it's getting passed into law. The governor hasn't signed it yet. He's stalling. He hijacked our bill for certain other reasons, but finally we're included. But you wouldn't know we were included in the media because they only talk about the brewers, because they have, you know, almost 200 brewers in the state and there's only 30 distilleries. But it's just as valuable to the distillers as it is to the brewers, because we already had 3 go out of business, probably because of that looming regulation that was going to come down if this bill didn't get passed. And this is literally 2 years that we've been trying to get this bill over the finish line, and in the lame duck session it did. So really, like Teresa, it's about the policy. It's about connecting with the other lobbyists and understanding what the brewers are looking for and trying to find common ground. Also with the wineries, we started working with them more over the past year and a half, and just trying to position all of ourselves against the mass producing alcohol interests that are in New Jersey. And, you know, the license holders who have, you know, our access to food is like nothing. And we're constantly being fought against, even though it's they can't support that fight, but together we can.
Yeah, you know, Florida's a really interesting political landscape. We being one of the top 3 spirits markets in the United States, and also being home to the largest distributor in the United States, there's a lot of money and resources dedicated to keeping things the way they are in this state, which means that anytime anything comes along, that if it's as simple as a merchandising, a bill that corrects, you know, the ability for distributors to merchandise or something that's pretty benign, it's jumped all over with a lot of attention. So there's a lot of, not going to say more than any other state, but there's a lot of input that has to happen. There's a lot of time and a lot of course, money that has to be spent for measures to be kind of played out in the state. So that makes it difficult. And I think we have an executive director with our and a lobbyist with our association. So there's a lot of face time that we try to create in the Capitol and let people know that we're here. And as I mentioned earlier, since we had a pretty large bill that passed that afforded us a lot of things, it's turned similar to, I think, Aaron, we've turned towards the consumer. We've turned towards beefing up our distillery trail, focusing more on the marketing and the outreach piece, working with the tourism boards and such. But it's because of those reasons, it is quite a challenging landscape.
Got it. So Southern wine is not in your membership, I guess. Just for everyone, I think Geoff, you can also I'll have your turn, but I believe I think you are away from the 3-tier, right? So you want more D2C, you want tourism, you want direct connections with the consumers. That's what I'm hearing. Geoff, over to you.
Well, yeah, Aaron's exactly right about that. I mean, that's what the San Diego Distillers Guild's really our purpose is driving business to our member distilleries. And, you know, much like he's in the middle of wine country, you know, you guys have 200 brewers in the state of New Jersey. We have 200 in San Diego County. So needless to say, the beer business is what everybody really focuses on in San Diego. And in California, when you think in terms of our state, it's really wine driven, and the wine lobby is really the largest in the state. And then after that comes beer, and then us craft distillers, you know, while we have a growing voice, are definitely way, way, way down the list. That said, you know, as a San Diego group, much like Paso Robles, we really focus on driving consumers, driving people to each of our facilities. We have an annual Guild Fest where we get, you know, 500-600 people together to come do an event. When we have room, we invite people from outside of San Diego to come and join and you know, bring your stuff. Plus, California has, you know, the state guild has been working on direct to consumers where we can ship in the state of California, and that's been a real. I mean, for a lot of places, not necessarily my shop, but for a lot of distilleries, they've benefited from that direct to consumer, where we can sell through our website, ship in the state of California with rules, and that really, to me, is a little bit more of a COVID times thing. It's changed a little bit since COVID, but I know that there are many distillers in the state that benefit. So especially in the touristy type areas.
Cool. I think we'll try to wrap up, as I understand, you've got a schedule here. So I'll open it to questions to Ankita if she's collected any from the audience and people attending. So Ankita, over to you.
Hi. So I think we already answered one question, but now we have two from the audience, and this is for anyone to answer. So it's about a direct to consumer. So D2C is relatively new for spirits. So how well are your distilleries exploiting this channel?
I can speak to that. So really, it's twofold. It's in California, we're allowed to ship direct to consumer. If somebody buys on the Seven Caves website, we can ship a bottle or up to 3 bottles per person per day to that consumer. Obviously we have shipping laws, just like if you ship wine. It's a way bigger challenge when we start talking about nationally being able to do that. It's a problem that big companies like Reserve Bar and Speakeasy and other companies are trying to figure out. It's a myriad web landscape that
Geoff, just to clarify, is there a legal or compliance challenge to ship in other states, or ability
absolutely
and budget challenge?
It's a massive compliance challenge.
Okay.
I mean, our every state is different, and there's a big push to try to clean up those laws, but truly the ability to ship nationwide is one that big companies are putting a lot of money into right now and hoping to try to find an answer. I hope they do, because it's it's going to open up a different market. But right now, it's to say that it's a gray area is probably an insult to gray areas. It's a smattering of independent stores that are being networked together by giant companies that are trying to make it work. And that's a panel. It's a panel for another discussion that's probably 3 times as long.
Quick one for everyone, I'm sure. This is, like after COVID or during COVID, we all grew our D2C and we thought that this is the new way the world's going to work and liquor stores are going to have an issues and Now we're back to the basics where, that knocking that bar or a liquor store gives you more ROI of your time than building a whole D2C and shipping that one case. It's black and white. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds. COVID gave us the business, but now we have to build the D2C. So by default, we're going back to the traditional routes, of the channels. What's your take on the reality of D2C? Like how tough, and are you going back to the basics, or are you still bullish on D2C?
I'm very bullish on D2C, especially out of the taste room. I mean, that's here to stay. We're going to be able to people can walk into the taste room, do a tasting, and they can buy bottles to walk home with them. Really the big question mark, and just to piggyback on what Geoff was saying, is shipping. And we've been able to ship since COVID, and we keep getting these 1-year extensions passed, allowing us to ship. And maybe Geoff feels the same, but personally, I feel like I can't put too much time and energy into investing into my online store and a shipping D2C business, because I don't know if that bill is going to go away. I would hate to put in all that time and investment to have that bill just go poof at the end of the year, which it very well could. So, of course, I'm pushing for, permanent D2C shipping in California. I know our state guild is, and the president of our is actually a member of the Paso Robles Distillery Trail as well. So I work pretty closely with him, and hopefully we can get something moved there. But I mean, a dozen states in the country already allow their distillers to ship. So you do see, it's not impossible. It can be done. So California obviously is a big one. I think I heard that New York and New Jersey maybe we're even planning on or getting bills introduced. But hopefully we can reach a point of critical mass to push it forward.
Yeah, New Jersey prohibits.
I think Walmart could not crack the bottle shops in New Jersey. So I don't know about the small distillers, but over to you, Teresa or John, anything on D2C? The same question that Ankita had.
In New York, we're fighting for it. We were able to ship direct to consumer under emergency executive authority during the pandemic, thanks to some great work by some of my leadership who are distillers in the guild. But it's very difficult. I mean, John was talking about, some of the longer established beverage producer segments have just they've been operating and participating in the political system since the end of Prohibition. And our sector is just so new. We are really building relationships and sort of trying to, fight some of our opponents who have just been, doing all the right things around the Capitol, for decades. So they're ahead of us. So there's a lot of headwinds, but we sort of focus on, in New York, the vast majority of liquor stores are very small. So we sort of focus on, one of our messages is, hey, when one of my distillers tells a legislator, you know what? I have a couple of retailers who really love me, but the most space they can give me is spot for 2 different products. And if I have 100 members and each of them are making at least 6 things, many of them a lot more, there's that sort of that access to consumers is important. And we've been surprised a lot in our conversations with legislators. A lot of them are like, "What do you mean I can't buy liquor online? This is crazy. I can buy everything else." People are surprised to even learn about this limitation, but of course there's heavy opposition, but this is an area where we're also working with some of our other sectors, some of the other statewide trade associations. The Cider Association particularly is also has this challenge. Wine has been able to ship direct to consumer since the 1980s. So this is part of our message is they've been doing it for decades. It's been safe and it hasn't hurt retailers. We also showed during the pandemic that it could happen safely. No teenagers are, getting alcohol online. And the other piece I just want to mention on this is that some of our distillery members were around at the time of the battles that led to wine DTC. And they talk about the importance of the drive for the market, the consumer market in New York. So we're focused on really sort of grassroots advocacy too, and activation, because, our people, consumers in the state of New York, they want to buy not just New York spirits, but things from elsewhere. So we think the consumer piece there is important on the policy piece, on the policy level.
So New Jersey prohibits us from delivering to anybody, direct to consumer. So we have to rely on things like farmers markets or the tasting room. But we're trying every year, every session to push something like that forward, because like Teresa said, it's not going to harm these license holders. It's not going to have an age restriction problem. That's all been proven even at farmers markets. I mean, even when I do ID someone at a farmers market and they look really young, they're like 24 or above. But people are just not participating like that. But again, we haven't had any ability to ship directly. The only thing that the New Jersey distillers have been able to do is set up some schemes like LibDib to get distribution into 42 states, and then rely on Excel Pay so they could have people come to their platform and sell them a bottle. But the big challenge there is it makes a bottle 1.5 to 2 times what they could buy it for at the distillery or even from us directly. So, that again turns the customer off. Are they turned off and have a bad taste about us or the system? We don't know. So it is very challenging, and we love for a national thing to come over and just abolish what the state can impose, but the hopes of that are pretty slim.
So what I'm hearing overall, I think I love the Aaron's answer, which is, we can't invest because it's all band-aid laws. Like it's just 1 year, 2 year, short term. So, to invest in technology or infrastructure and change your strategy, I think that is one of the main reason why people are not going all in or something. It's just more of inbound, what I'm hearing. Like, okay, order came, you shipped, not like trying to go out and build. Anyone else on this? Otherwise, Ankita, you have one more, right?
The last one is mainly about sustainability. So Stephen has asked this question that he has been working with a lot of clients and groups to collect and convert the waste into natural gas. So you want to know whether this is a viable option for sustainability or not.
I don't know much about converting waste into natural gas. I am old enough to remember when natural gas was considered sustainable and green too, but I know, in the recent years, it's been decided that natural gas has too big of a carbon footprint and isn't considered sustainable anymore. So I'm not sure how that would work. I know that, in California, we're looking at, I haven't seen much come through yet, but I know we're looking at probably some, restrictions on using natural gas, for our heating systems, for our stills too. So I don't know how much of a future there is in natural gas. I mean, it's going to be here to stay at least, but as far as it being considered a clean, sustainable energy.
The only thing I've heard being done, and I think all of us are too small for it, not on the natural gas side, but reclaiming the CO2 from fermentations and then distributing it as compressed liquid CO2 in the market. So that's a very good sustainable method. We are way too small to ever be able to do that effectively. And I think every distillery in New Jersey is. I don't know about California or Florida, but it is a great concept because then you don't release that into the air and then have someone else create CO2 for that market. But that's all I've heard on the gas side.
Yeah, and I mean, likewise, I'm not credentialed enough to talk about it. I don't know of anybody in Florida that's doing it. The closest thing that I've seen or witnessed firsthand is what you've got companies like Air Company out of Brooklyn that has actual legitimate carbon capture technology where they're actually capturing carbon out of the air and they're turning that into a biofuel for airliners. They're making vodka, they're making perfumes, all kinds of other uses, and they're actually a carbon not neutral but carbon positive in a good way. So they're actually depleting carbon from the environment. Which is crazy, and I think could have a lot of impacts if that can scale up. But that's the closest I've gotten to anything like that.
That's a good answer. What is the name of the company? So I'm sure the person would be happy with that and do the research.
Yeah, it's the company's called Air, AIR, and
Okay.
They're based out of Brooklyn.
And I'm happy to
Teresa
be
might
members
know
of
them.
the New York Guild. They're members of our New York Distillers Guild. So
Super.
thanks for that.
Great.
Very
So
smart
reach out
group.
to.
Very smart guys.
Amazing. Just a latest update on your own state when it comes to compliance. While I've got you here, might as well just finish that last one. Anything that happened, the bill got passed in the last 3 months, or you're expecting in the next 6 months. So just give us a compliance update, Teresa.
Sure. I mentioned, we had this tax policy win in New York last year. We had another victory which related to was also a parity kind of within the industry, which was in New York, we have a farm category distillery license, which involves X percentage of New York agricultural product, but it resulted in some tasting rooms. Many of our distillers had a farm license, and they have the other license, under which they might make something like rum. Nobody's really growing sugarcane in New York, so we had many of our distillers were in this weird position where in their tasting rooms they could sell their farm license products, but not their products that they produced under the other license, which was awkward and confusing to consumers and stuff like that. So that was sounds like a small win, but that was a big victory, particularly for those members who produce both types of products.
Well, we have the one that is a combination for all craft beverage manufacturers that give us unrestricted events. It allows us to coordinate with restaurants and food trucks where we were prohibited from it before. It abolishes the need for us to give a tour before we can serve people. And it also gives us 25 off-premise licenses. We're not sure we know how we're able to use those, but apparently we can sell products, whether they're cocktails or bottles for off-premise consumption. We're not sure, but we can go to previously places that we couldn't go to, like street fairs and festivals and stuff like that, or a PBA get together and stuff, and then sell bottles. So it's actually a really big win on our side.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it stops them from restricting what we can do, and we don't have to advertise, or we don't have limits on advertising events. And they allowed us to do things like football games and stuff on TVs, which I know it sounds really weird, but we were prohibited from doing everything.
Yeah, we don't have any new legislature in Florida. There was a piece of the bill that got passed a few years ago, which I've mentioned a few times, that had to do with agriculture, where I think a consolation of getting that bill passed was that a certain percentage of Florida ag had to be used in your product. It was a very loose line. We have no clues yet of what enforcement's going to look like, whether that's a certain percentage of each product or a certain percentage of your total portfolio has to include a certain amount. And then how do you define Florida agriculture? That'll come up in 2025. So that's something that we're monitoring from the state level to figure out what that is going to look like, because that's obviously that's going to change a lot of people's business models, and depending on how it's enforced. But that's probably the next biggest piece that we have our eyes on for Florida.
Well, we have the our D2C shipping bill was passed last year that allows us to be able to ship through the end of 2024. So again, this year we're going to be working towards getting a permanent bill passed that will hopefully extend it past 2024 and beyond. We have the bottle recycling bill that went through that is going to allow liquor bottles to be recycled and wine bottles, and everyone who exports spirits into California will have to have it on their label. They'll have to put, the CACRV symbol on their label. And another big one that passed, kind of sounds like something similar to what Teresa had, was, in Paso Robles especially, we have a lot of wineries who also have distilleries, and they weren't able to do both wine tastings and spirits tastings in the same taste room. They had to have separate rooms for spirits or wine tasting. And we got a bill passed that allows wineries that have distilleries to now be able to taste wine and spirits in the same room.
Nice, like a full bar now. Yep,
Yeah.
Geoff. Yeah, I believe you can also purchase beer and serve, right? You have a retail license as well.
Yeah, so that's part of our Type 74 that we can potentially for our events have beer and serve. That's one of the areas of compliance that I know the ABC in California is starting to worry about, which is people who have pulled our craft distiller's license called a Type 74, and there are a few folks that have started pulling these licenses and essentially just operating a bar. And so the ABC is starting to crack down a little bit on places that aren't actually distilling, just buying neutral and making vodka. So that's something that we're starting to hear a little bit about. And one of the big things that's in the works, and I kind of hope it passes, I do hope it passes from an RTD perspective, is the ability to sell under 10% alcohol RTDs into beer and wine license only. That's if you're in the RTD game, that's a big game changer, because then it allows us to sell. Again, it's like what everybody's talking about, just continuity and parity with the beer or wine industry. That's really all we're asking. And hopefully that gains steam. There's a lot of interest at the California legislator level, so hopefully they realize that we're not poisoning kids.